Welcome everybody to 52 Living Ideas. Today's Monday, so it's Poetry Monday. The format, people are going to read poems that they like, including their own poems. Then we're going to feature Gitanjali just before the breakout rooms. Then in the breakout rooms, we're going to actually produce poems on spring. And then we come back and have a discussion. That's the format. We're going to start with Allison, Joe, and Mike. Allison, go ahead.
Okay, this is called Easter in Pittsburgh by James Laughlin. Even on Easter Sunday, when the church was a jungle of lilies and ferns for Uncle Paul, who loved his liquor, so he would pound away with both his fists on the stone pulpit, shouting, "Sin, sin, sin, and the fiery fires of hell." And I cried all afternoon the first time I heard what they did to Jesus. It was something the children shouldn't know about until they were older, but the new maid told me, and both of us cried a lot. And so mother got another one right away. And she sent away Miss Richardson, who came all the way from England because she kept telling me about her fiance, Mr. Bowles. Lion died suddenly of a heart attack. He just one day at lunch, "I'm not afraid, I'm not well." And the next thing, they knew he was sliding under the table. Easter was nice. The eggs were silly, but the big lilies were wonderful. And when Uncle Paul got so far from drinking that he couldn't squeeze into the pulpit anymore and had to preach from the floor, there was an elder meeting, and they said they would have the pulpit rebuilt. But Uncle Paul said no, it was the Lord's manifest will, and he would pass his remaining years in sacred studies. I like Thanksgiving better because that was the day Father took us down to the mill. But Easter I liked next best, and the rabbits died, and we fed them beer tops, and the lamb pulled up by the grass by the roots was sold to Mr. Page, the butcher. I asked Uncle Robert what were sacred studies. He said he was not really sure, but he guessed they came in a bottle. And mother sent me away from the table when I couldn't eat my lamb chops. That was ridiculous, she said. It wasn't the Lamb of God. It was just Caesar Andromad nibbles. But I just couldn't. In the year of the strike, we didn't go to church at all on Easter because they said it wasn't safe downtown. So instead, we had prayers in the library. And then right in the middle, the telephone rang. It was Mr. Shupstead at the mill. They had to use tear gas. Father made a special prayer right after for God's protection and mercy. And then he sent us out to the farm with mother. We stayed a week and missed school, but it rained a lot and I broke the bathroom mirror and had to learn a long psalm. I like that poem because it just has all these little vignettes from different holidays over many years. And I think on every holiday and every spring, we tend to think back to all the different springs and the different Easters over the course of our lives. And I don't know, it just kind of spoke to me.
Wonderful. Thank you. Maritza, you want to go ahead and read your spring poem? Go ahead.
I can do that. Yeah. So I was being entirely not tongue in cheek, I guess, absolutely lazy. And so Christina Rossetti has a poem titled Spring. Frost locked all the winter, seeds and roots and stones of fruits. What shall make their sap ascend, that they may put forth shoots, tips of tender green, leaf or blade or sheath, telling of the hidden life that breaks forth underneath, life nursed in its grave by death. Blows the thaw wind pleasantly, drips the soaking rain, by fits looks down at waking sun, young grass springs on the plain. Young leaves clothe early hedgerow trees, seeds and roots and stones of fruits, swollen with sap, put forth their shoots. Curled-headed ferns sprout in the lane, birds sing and pair again. There is no time like spring, when life's alive in everything. Before new nestlings sing, before cleft swallows speed their journey back along the trackless track, God guides their wing. He spreads their table that they nothing lack, before the daisy grows a common flower, before the sun has power to scorch the world up in his noontide hour. There is no time like spring that passes by. There is no life like spring life born to die, piercing the sod, clothing the uncouth clod, hatched in the nest, fledged on the windy bough, strong on the wing. There is no time like spring that passes by, now newly born, and now hastening to die.
Wonderful. Thank
Thanks.
you. Thank you. Next up is Joe.
I have The Tide Rises, The Tide Falls by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. The tide rises, the tide falls, the twilight darkens, the curlew calls. Along the sea, damp and brown, the traveler hastens toward the town. And the tide rises, the tide falls. Darkness settles on the roofs and walls. But the sea in the darkness calls. The little waves with their soft white hands efface the footprints in the sand. And the tide rises, the tide falls. The morning breaks, the steeds in their stalls stamp the neigh as the hostler calls. The day returns, but nevermore returns the traveler to the shore. And the tide rises, the tide falls. Yeah, I mean, I really like this one. Primarily, I love the ocean. I find a lot of solace at the shore, walking along the beach. It's just where I can find some tranquility. But it also speaks to the cycle of life, and how the tide is something that is ongoing, and that we return to nature. And it's a good way of looking at life. I mean, we've talked a lot about nature here, but how nature is always here, and life is transient. And so I like this poem a lot. I mean, I love the sea.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. Rupali, would you be able to read the number 5 of Gitanjali next? Because what I want to do is that I want to read the 9 poems in order. I think that would be more interesting, just one voice reading it. Would you be able to read number 5? Go ahead.
Sure. Give me just a minute, yeah?
Sure. So I'll put you next after Mike. Mike, go ahead. Oh, you're ready? Sorry.
Yeah, I was ready.
Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay, so when I read this poem, I just thought of 52 living ideas, and I'll tell you why. So I'll read the poem, and then you can figure out why.
Mm-hmm.
So this poem is about, this whole collection of Gitanjali by Rabindranath Tagore is a collection of devotional poems. I ask for a moment's indulgence to sit by thy side. The works that I have in hand, I will finish afterwards. Away from the sight of thy face, my heart knows no rest nor respite, and my work becomes an endless toil in a shoreless sea of toil. Today, the summer has come at my window with its sighs and murmurs, and the bees are plying their minstrelsy at the court of the flowering grove. Now is the time to sit quiet, face to face with thee, and to sing dedication of life in this silent and overflowing leisure. And I feel like this when I come home from work and I turn on 52 Living Ideas.
Mm-hmm.
And so I said, I want to read this number 5 because I just feel like this. I can, I know I have a lot of work and it will be taken care of later, but it's this, joy and the amount of wealth I get just, by participating in 52 Living Ideas. So I thought I would read this. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Rupali. Thank you. Next up is Mike. Anybody else wants to read poems? Go ahead and type exclamation mark. Mike.
Yeah, the poem I chose has a darker side to it. I'll explain why when I'm finished. It's a poem by Billy Collins called "The First Night," and above the poem he has a quote by a Spanish poet named Juan Ramon Jimenez, and the quote is, "The worst thing about death must be the first night." And the poem is, "Before I opened you, Jimenez, it never occurred to me that day and night would continue to circle each other in the ring of death. But now you have me wondering if there will also be a sun and a moon, and will the dead gather to watch them rise and set? Then repair each soul alone to some ghastly equivalent of a bed? Or will the first night be the only night, a darkness for which we have no other name? How feeble our vocabulary in the face of death, how impossible to write it down. This is where language will stop. The horse we have ridden all our lives, rearing up at the edge of a dizzying cliff. The word that was in the beginning and the word that was made flesh, those and all the other words will cease. Even now, reading you on this trellised porch, how can I describe a sun that will shine after death? But it is enough to frighten me into paying more attention to the world's day moon, to sunlight bright on water or fragmented in a grove of trees, and to look more closely here at these small leaves, these sentinel thorns, whose employment it is to guard the rose." So I was in the library today. I wasn't even sure if I was going to make it tonight, and it's poetry month in the library I belong to, and there's this Billy Evans book called Ballistics, and I just literally opened it up, and this was the first poem, and I didn't know if there was a theme tonight or not. So this is obviously coming from the dark side, but this is so new to me, and I'm reading this poem, and I just have this vivid vision of the poet's view of the mystery of death, and just how he doesn't have words to describe it, and how the dead, is it one night only, or is it some extension? To me, he seemed to capture such mystery and what it would be like to actually die. And then he closes the poem with himself on a porch, bringing you back to the importance of, I guess, smelling the roses. That's kind of his intention at the end. And again, this is so new to me reading poetry, and I was just blown away by how in that moment, just flipping that book to the first page, where I'm reading this and I'm going, wow, what an impression that this poet made on me.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Mike. Next up is Marco. If anybody else wants to read, you're welcome to do that. Marco.
This is called Lines by Martha Collins. Draw a line, write a line, there. Stay in line, hold a line, a glance. Between the lines is fine, but don't turn corners, cross, cut in, go over, or out. Between 2 points of no returns, a line of flight. Between 2 points of views, a line of vision. But a line of thought is rarely straight. On open lines, no party line, however fine your point. A line of fire communicates, but drop your weapons and drop your line. Consider the shortest distance from X to Y. Let X be me, let Y be you. Yeah, I just like how she, went to a lot of different places, just using the subject of lines.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Marco. All right. So I'm going to read 9 poems from Gitanjali. They are on the theme of my presentation last time on, singing with God. I think Tagore in Gitanjali captures that spirit. So one note of detail. Instead of thou, I'm going to use you. I find it more appealing personally. Gitanjali, Git is song. So this song and poetry is one and the same thing, because in the scribal age, the bards did poetry and they sang poetry. So that it's one and the same thing. So it is about your expression. Gitanjali is an offering of songs or offering of poems. Okay, that's what this is. I know not how you sing, my master. I ever listen in silent amazement. The light of thy music illumines the world. The life breath of your music runs from sky to sky. The holy stream of your music breaks through all stony obstacles and rushes on. My heart longs to join in your song, but vainly struggles for a voice. I would speak, but speech breaks not into song, and I cry out baffled. Ah, thou hast made my heart captive in the endless meshes of your music, my master. When you command me to sing, it seems that my heart would break with pride. And I look at your face and tears come to my eyes. All that is harsh and dissonant in my life melts into one sweet harmony, and my adoration spreads wings like a glad bird on its flight across the sea. I know you take pleasure in my singing. I know that only as a singer I come before your presence. I touch by the edge of the far spreading wing of my song your feet, which I could never aspire to reach. Drunk with the joy of singing, I forget myself and call you friend, who are my Lord. I ask for a moment's indulgence to sit by your side. The works I have in hand, I will finish afterwards. Away from the sight of your face, my heart knows no rest or respite, and my work becomes endless toil in a shoreless sea of toil. Today, the summer has come to my window with its sighs and murmurs, and the bees are plying their minstrelsy at the court of the flowering grove. Now it is time to sit quiet, face to face with you, and sing dedication of life in this silent and overflowing leisure. My song has put off her adornments. She has no pride of dress and decoration. Ornaments would mar our union. They would come between you and me. Their jingling would drown your whispers. My poet's vanity dies in shame before your sight. O master poet, I have sat down at your feet. Only let me make my life simple and straight, like a flute of reed for you to fill with music. The child who is decked with princess robes and who has jeweled chains around his neck loses all pleasure in his play. His dress hampers him at every step. In fear that it may be frayed or stained with dust, he keeps himself from the world and is afraid even to move. Mother, It is no gain, your bondage of finery, if it keeps one shut off from the healthful dust of the earth, if it rob one of the right of entrance to the great fair of common human life. Leave this chanting and singing and telling of beads. Who do you worship in this lonely dark corner of a temple with doors all shut? Open your eyes and see your God is not before you. He is there where the tiller is tilling the hard ground and where the pathmaker is breaking stones. He is with them in sun and in shower, and his garment is covered with dust. Put off your holy mantle, and even like him, come down on the dusty soil. Deliverance? Where is this deliverance to be found? Our Master himself has joyfully taken upon him the bonds of creation. He's bound with us all forever. Come out of thy meditations and leave aside your flowers and incense. What harm is there if your clothes become tattered and stained? Meet him and stand by him in toil and in sweat of your brow. The song that I came to sing remains unsung to this day. I have spent many days in stringing and in unstringing my instrument. The time has not come true. The words have not been rightly set. Only there is agony of wishing in my heart. The blossom has not opened. Only the wind is sighing by. I have not seen his face, nor have I listened to his voice. Only I have heard his gentle footsteps from the road before my house. The livelong day has passed in spreading his seat on the floor, but the lamp has not been lit, and I cannot ask him into my house. I live in the hope of meeting with him, but this meeting is not yet. I have had my invitation to this world's festival, and thus my life has been blessed. My eyes have seen and my ears have heard. It was my part at this feast to play upon my instrument, and I have done all I could. Now I ask, has the time come at last when I may go in and see thy face and offer you my silent salutations? On the day when the lotus bloomed, alas, my mind was straying, and I knew it not. My basket was empty, and the flower remained unheeded. Only now and again, a sadness fell upon me, and I started up from my dream and felt a sweet trance of strange fragrance in the south wind. That vague sweetness made my heart ache with longing, and it seemed to me that it was the eager breath of the summer seeking its completion. I knew not then that it was so near, that it was mine, and that this perfect sweetness had blossomed in the depth of my own heart. Thank you. All right. So that is Gitanjali. I simply love it. I mean, that's my first introduction to really deep poetry. And still, whenever I come to it, it actually captures the spirit of Bhagavad Gita better than anything else that I've seen. So just wanted to share that with you. All right. So shall we do the breakout rooms?
There's a couple new people. I didn't know if you want to give a moment in case any
Sure.
newcomers wanted to read their poem.
Absolutely. Anybody else wants to read? You're welcome to do so. Go ahead and type an exclamation mark. Okay. All right. So Maritza, could you describe the assignment today?
Works better if I'm not muted. So the theme today is spring. We're going to use the same format we did last time. And so we're going to go with a theme without any additional focus in concepts for you. So just the major theme is going to be spring. And what we're going to ask is when you're in your breakout room, everyone's going to draw a line. And it doesn't have to be just one line. You guys can, everyone can throw out 2 lines if they want. But the idea is to create a collaborative poem. And all the lines that you throw out, you'll put them together. And something beautiful will come out at the end of it. And then we'll come back together and we'll read the poems to each other.
Wonderful. And we'll run this for about 20 minutes. We'll come back after 20 minutes and we'll figure out what to talk about. Starting the breakout rooms now. Hi, Laura. Everybody will be here in 11 seconds. You're on mute. Welcome, everybody. Hi. Welcome back. All right. So Allison and Maritza, who would like to go first?
I cede the floor to Allison.
Allison, I would recommend unmuting.
Sorry. We want to request that when we do these, we have longer breakout rooms because we always feel like we don't have enough time to really.
Okay.
We get it written, but we don't have enough time to really edit it the way we would like.
Sure, sure. So 25 minutes. Maritza, what's your thinking?
I could use an extra 5 minutes.
Okay, let's do 25. Okay, go ahead.
Okay. All right. So this is the unedited version, but whatever. All right. I stare at the cherry blossoms and watch the beautiful pink blossoms glow. You always promise us new birth, any spring. Spring always promises us new birth. The joy of seeing the promise that the cherry blossoms bring us. The tulip bud peeking out of the wet earth bring us the promise of new color. The chirps of the birds and the music of the spring. The days grow longer. The ting-a-ling-ling of the ice cream man bringing joy to both children and grown-ups. The soothing sound of the lawnmower while I put my feet up on the porch and smiled over the top of my book. The tulip bud peeking out and the birds whistle in the key of spring. Spring brings harmony to everything. With harmony brings peace to the world. With peace brings love, and with love brings joy.
Thank you. Thank you, Allison.
Sure.
Maritza.
Okay, I'm gonna throw ours up on the chat as well. A yawn, a stretch, and the warmth of gentle sunlight awakens me from a deep slumber. With all these new beginnings, the endings are hidden. I reach out to find you gone. As I look through the misty haze, everything turns to green. The air is fresh. I sit on a park bench watching the branches sway. Fragile blossoms intoxicate my thoughts. Melting snow burbles through the streams. Hope is entangled in the fresh spring scents. I look for peace, but war is coming, as deadly as frost to newly born leaves.
Wonderful. Thank you. Do either of anybody else wants to comment? Either Maritza, Allison want to comment about the experience today?
Well, I learned today that I need to get access to Google. I couldn't do the collaborative thing. I guess in one of the other breakouts in a previous session, everybody got to write at the same time using Google Docs.
Yep. I'm
apparently a dinosaur. I don't have Google on I don't have the Google Docs on this computer, so I couldn't do that. Sorry, team. I will say our poem is like, I was telling them that I felt like it was just like, if you've ever planted anything in like February or March and put it outside, you like go into absolute panic mode if there's like, if the weather's dipping in the 20s in April, because you can kill your whole crop, right? So I just felt like that was our poem. Our poem is, that's the note we were stuck on, that like really long wistful note that's so hopeful that, yes, I've got these little baby seedlings, they're going to make it. Will they make it? I don't know, it was fascinating to watch it coming alive.
Sure.
I just found it interesting that they both mentioned war in some way. Like they both turned dark, actually. I mean, I know that sounds odd, but it is about spring and everything. I don't know how that creeped in. I don't know. Just a thought. But as far as our experience goes, it was, I mean, it was fun.
Okay. Very good. So I wanted to ask people their reaction to Gitanjali. If anybody has any comments about that. because it's very difficult for me to judge what it seems like to other people, because I kind of, it's been with me for such a long time. So if anybody has comments about what it was like hearing Gitanjali, just go ahead and type exclamation mark. Joe.
I enjoyed number 7.
Mhm.
I really did. There was this element of humility
That's
that exists.
yeah. My song has put off her
Yes.
adornments. Yeah. Mhm.
Yes, she has no pride of dress or decoration. Ornaments would mar our union. Yeah, and it's just this, it reminds me actually of something similar to the Tao,
Mhm.
where there's this I forget which Tao verse it was, but it was pretty recent, where it talked about essentially not dressing to impress other people. And so I felt like that, but overall I felt like it was just it really kind of, it was beautiful in the sense that how it used musical instruments and intertwined kind of I think that was number 16 that was as well. I was looking very quickly. I think it was.
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah, I've had my invitation to this world's.
Yes, that's the one. Yes, I had my invitation to the World's Fair, or the fair, and that was like the pinnacle of life, and that was my role. That was like, you've done what you've come to do.
Yep.
I really liked that as well. There definitely, I had a feeling of the Tao
Mhm.
in a way. It was somewhat religious in my, well, not somewhat, it was very religious.
Yeah, the last point about the fair, I mean, I like this point where saying that, look, this is not about otherworldliness. It is this world. God is in this world. So it is kind of integration of the inner and the outer that Tagore brings, shows in so many different ways. Mike, what did you think?
I don't remember the number, Shrikant. It was later on. I like the one about stringing and unstringing the instrument.
Yes.
And it gave the impression of waiting even for the master, if I'm not mistaken, but it hasn't come yet. There was a sense of almost like a sad anticipation that I took from that verse.
Excellent point. Wonderful. So folks, I want to tell you that I'm just completely I'm just feverishly working on my diagram, the Bhagavad Gita diagram. And this Thursday, I'm going to do something most ambitious thing that I've done. I'm going to try to map John 1, Gospel of John, chapter 1, into the diagram. So I'm going to do it by itself first, talking about John 1 itself using the diagram. And then I want to talk about the distinctions, differences between John 1 and Bhagavad Gita. So those, it's the most challenging thing that I've done. I'm a little bit scared because I don't know Bhagavad Gita well. I don't know Bible well, and I'm trying to kind of see the commonalities and the differences between them. So don't miss that. I've not announced it yet, but I will be announcing it shortly. Joe, go ahead.
So will you have 2 separate diagrams or one on top of the other?
No, it's the same diagram.
Same diagram.
Before.
So
And
you're going
I'm
to
just
capture
going to put that up, and I'm just going to draw all of John 1 on it.
Wow.
So that's what I'm going to try to do.
That is ambitious.
I'm going to use words, and I'm going to, and John 1 is so beautiful. It's like, I mean, it's going to be 2 sections. One, capturing the beauty of John 1 and mapping it. Okay, what does it look, how does it fit into that diagram? Like, what is word? What is God? What is Holy Spirit? What is the world? What is, and I've done it up to like chapter 4, but John 1 itself was so, my original plan was to go up to chapter 4, but it is covering too much. But John 1 it's, but by that itself, you can spend a lot of time on John 1.
Yeah.
So I'm really looking forward to that. All right. So what would you guys like to talk about? You want to raise any topic? So anybody at this point can raise any topic that they would like to talk about, or put a question on the table that they would like to talk about. Maritza.
I'm kind of stuck on the similar thing that Joe mentioned here briefly, the idea of how fascinating it is that a central theme of spring brings to us both endings and beginnings, and how it's as much as we rejoice in all of the new that we're getting, we're not able to forget that there's things ending, because the person who loves the snow, all the snow is going away. And it's, that just like the tender, the fragility that spring also evokes for us. I know it's kind of fascinating, and it's poignant. It's this by far, I felt like these were very like almost hold your breath type of poems written here today. It's interesting.
Rupali, go ahead. Rupali, you need to unmute. Don't know if she can. Okay, so she wants to talk about let's.
Sorry about that.
Go ahead.
I couldn't unmute. Give me 1 second. So we were talking about spring, and Maritza mentioned about the frost, and there are days in spring when it's still cold and not yet warm, and it's in between winter and spring. And it reminded me of a poem by Thoreau, which kind of captures that. It was sung by, it was recited by our students last year. So I'd like to read it. It's called The Winter Scene by Henry David Thoreau. The rabbit leaps, the mouse out creeps, the flag out peeps beside the brook. The ferret weeps, the marmot sleeps, the owlet keeps in his snug nook. The apples thaw, the ravens caw, the squirrels gnaw, the frozen fruit. To their retreat, I track the feet of mice that eat the apple's root. The snow dust falls, the otter crawls, the partridge calls far in the wood. The traveler dreams, the tree ice gleams, the blue jay screams in angry mood. The willows droop, the alders stoop, the pheasants group beneath the snow. The catkins green cast over the scene a summer's sheen, a genial glow. It just reminded me of all the things that are coming to waking up, but there is the snow still. And as everybody said, the two poems have the overtones of the war, and that's, yes, there's this hope, there's the beginning, but there's also this negative thing that's in our face. And I would say, as Bhagavad Gita would say, there's the good and the evil, and it's a choice that people make. So I feel spring gives us that hope, at least, to make the choice. So thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Rupali. I think, in this spring, I think the winter has been very long with COVID, and we are seeing spring come, after that long winter. So it is, this spring is special. Next up is Joe, followed by Alice and Joe.
Actually, now you can let Allison go. I was going to just bring up the spring poem.
Sure.
That because Rupali wasn't answering, so.
Thank you. Next up is Allison.
Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah, it's kind of like with COVID and the war. That's why we're kind of in this little thing of like, can we let ourselves be happy? Like what's coming next? And it kind of reminds me of what we were talking about. I think it was in our breakout room with Dostoevsky yesterday, because we we're saying like, or maybe it was the whole group. We were saying like at the very end, like there's this hope that things are getting better, and then, you know, it's like the Jaws moment where like, just when you thought it's safe to go back in the water, here comes Jaws. So we're sort of like, I think we're finally in a good place. We're finally able to relax, let ourselves just be happy. But there's a little bit of this like, well, you know, but I think it is, happiness is a choice. At a certain point, you just have to like let go of that fear, because otherwise, you know, I mean, you could be like, COVID ends and you get hit by a bus. I mean, you know, like you have to just let yourself enjoy life while you've got it. And, you know, what's the point of worrying?
I'm going to read a spring song by Louis Sullivan. I'm just going to read the end of it, because you can now see if you can see the similarities between that and the transcendentalists that we have seen and Tagore. But Joe, go ahead.
No, go ahead. All right.
Okay.
Yeah,
Sure.
I'd rather hear what you were about to read.
Okay, all right, and then I'll come to you. Okay. So this is, I'm starting midstream, and you can read the whole thing. It's just beautiful. I'm going to read just the beginning and the end. How about that? I'm going to read the beginning and the end. This is the last chapter of Kindergarten Chats. It's called the Spring Song. It starts, they say that love is blind, but it's not so. Love is clairvoyant. The loved one is blind. They say many a thing, my lad, but it's not so. Where love is not else exists. Nothing else exists. They say, well, no matter what they say, love is love. It is the power of powers. It's why we live. It's our last refuge, our first hope, our unsullied, and our simple joy. I'm going to jump right to the end. Surely God has loved and sought you. So you sing of him. Then as surely will God come to me, come to those who watch and wait. Then will he gladden my heart as he sends the sun to gladden the water and the birds and every living thing that hails him with no creed but life and love. The spring is singing in her gladsome song. Hear it all, my lad. Hear its diapason, that is a grand burst of sound. Hear the splendor of his flow. Remember it forever. There surely will another spring rise. You shall prevail. There surely will a springtime come into the garden of the heart. You shall prevail. Then will come beauty. Then will come power. Then create. You shall prevail, but not self-shamed. As spring is not self-shamed, be virile to the end. Radiant spring, inspiring spring, the glory and the gentleness of her power will come to you. Use it wisely, use it well, you shall prevail. Enamored and enamoring spring, the spring that flows, spring that follows winter of the heart. For the heart has ever seasons, such as man. So hope in the spring. It is the time for hope. So shall I believe in spring. It is the time to believe. So shall we in the springtime. It is our time for willing. Now begin. So that is Louis Sullivan. You can see the echoes here. Right, Joe.
I'm still processing what you actually just read, but you can see the transcendentalism in it. You know, it's just, and it reminds me of the quote that you often use, the outside was starting to break in, so then I could break out. And about then it's just this internal breaking out into nature.
The thing
And
I
as
like sorry,
go
the
go
thing I
ahead.
like about this particular one is how he goes imperceptibly between nature and human being. You know, the different moods of people and different expressions of people, emotions of people, and of nature. And you can see the rhythms, you know, the corresponding rhythms of each of them. And what he's saying is that this is possible. So remember that this is possible. This is possible to you. No matter what state you are in, this is what is possible. You know, yes, there can be winters for the human heart, but there is spring, and it is as real. So okay.
It's of hope too. It brings hope as well.
Yeah. Anybody else? Any comments? What is so?
So, you know, it's fascinating to see the parallels there with the transcendentalist thinking and Sullivan's thinking. You can see it before, but you know, seeing it now in these two poems, it's really interesting. And the really more interesting, almost though, Shrikant, is the similarities between the poem you just read by Louis Sullivan and the poems this group created in the Breakout Rooms. There's that interweaving of hope, caution, longing, you know, cautionary tale. It's all like rolled up together. So it's quite fascinating that, you know, the human condition is such that we all, you know, we thinking beings tend to ascribe these concepts with this theme of spring. It's kind of cool.
Anything anybody else wants to bring up? You've got a little bit of time, so you're welcome to bring up anything that you want to talk about. Joe.
I liked how Rapali this evening linked her poem to 52 Living Ideas. I thought that was really, and I remember actually my initial time coming here, and it was in the spring. It was the beginning of COVID, and it was something that we started with. Well, there were several different series. With Young was the first series. And then went into the Great Ideas. There was the Stoicism series. And if you really just look back at it, we're emerging from COVID. And there's been a lot of negatives for me personally in COVID. But this got me through it. I mean, you know, at the same time, it's what actually, you know, it's funny because there's just, and I thought it probably captured it beautifully. You can come here and you can let go. Sometimes it's like, you know, you're tired, but I said this million times over that I always feel rejuvenated coming out of it. And so, and you never regret it. So, and it's almost, if I don't go, there's something wrong. It's like there's this what's this gap? I mean, you know, that I have in my evening, that and it was, And I got to be honest, even my week in Rome, after a while, I was thinking to myself, I was like, I haven't seen Shrikant for a week. I was like, this is actually the record. I mean, because even we would see each other, and yeah. So it's interesting that we're now in the spring, and it's been
It's 2 years.
2 years,
2 years.
and a lot of relationships later. So I think that's really kind of, because COVID has been really challenging for a lot of people, some more than others. But yeah, this rebirth, this discussion around rebirth, this reminder, it's very helpful this evening.
Thank you very much, Joe. Joe, really appreciate that. Thanks. And it's wonderful to have you here. You know, it's like I many times, you know, it's like I'm saying, okay, let's start the meetup. Wait a minute, Joe is not here. It's not time yet to start the meetup. So thank you. Laura, followed by Maritza and Mike. Laura.
Okay, well, a little bit. One thing that this morning, I have ethical culture on Sunday rather, and this one woman suddenly started talking about how she went back and, you know, she started to look at nature, and she finally started to understand the importance of nature in her life. And I was like, wow, I got to talk to this woman and turn her on. It was the first time I've ever heard anybody really say something like that. And it was like, wow, you know, we talked about this, and now it's a real life thing for people. So that was interesting, you know, to have that experience with her. The other thing I was going to say, it has been a really wonderful 2 years. I mean, in a horrible time, in our small world of, you know, what was horrible for us. I think this experience has been incredibly rewarding. I realize I can still think, which is good. I mean, it wasn't clear to me. And so that's all been wonderful. And, you know, I did miss it but there was just, my brain was shot, and I figured, why go and not be able to understand anything anyone's saying. So that bothered me that I couldn't do that. So, but really, I feel like I've grown through this experience. I mean, not just because I can say something in 30 seconds now, although I really am impressed with myself. Well, that's a challenge, and I want others to. I'll try and meet me up on it. You know, anybody wants to try and beat me in 30 seconds, go for it. But I doubt you're going to be able to do that. And also, you know, you've introduced me to so many different things, and Sullivan's incredible. And now, see, I brought up the transcendentalist during that, and you said we'll talk about that later. And now we've come to it, but I did see transcendentalism in Sullivan because I had actually read a pretty interesting story about transcendentalists from the perspective of the one woman who was very active in it. So it was a really interesting view of transcendentalism through her perspective. So if I could remember the title of the book, I'd really recommend it. And I may try and search it out and see if I can find it, because I would recommend it for people to read if they're interested in a history of transcendentalism. But really, Shrikant, I mean, like Joe said, I think you've really given us, you know, I always call you the Pied Piper, and I think the Pied Pipers led us out of the darkest and ugliest time in our history, you know, for us. Yeah, well, it's an incredible feat. I mean, you come with such joy of learning and talking about things, and, you know, you've never been down about it. I mean, you know, keeping it all out of our perspective was easy for you, just because you came with such enthusiasm about things that happened, you know, 200 years ago, and somebody, you know, it's not easy to do that right now. It's been great.
Thank you.
And we just got to keep going, you know, I mean, because there are going to be more things we're going to have to look. I mean, Donald Trump may run for president again, and we're really going to need this. So just keep it going. You know?
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Laura.
No,
Really
thank
appreciate
you.
it. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Laura, really appreciate it. I have also, it's also really been inspiring to see you change, like from the time you started coming to now, the extent to which you are able to articulate your thoughts, be on the point, be focused. You can actually do things in 30 seconds, which are quite amazing. And what it does is it basically, it's kind of power of, if you've done things right throughout your life, no matter what happens to you, that is there in you. And when you kind of make yourself do it, a lot of it comes back. And that's really, really good for you. So I think that's wonderful. Maritza.
I will say that I went the opposite direction, Shrikant. I believe I speak so much more now than I used to. I've become more long-winded. I will not place the blame upon you, though, I promise.
No, but you make a lot of sense when you're speaking. So even if it is long-winded, I evaluate how much is being done within each 2 minutes.
I see.
So on that standard, you meet it with flying colors.
So it's funny because I actually I was not introduced to you in spring, but it was a type of spring. So it's I came on your radar because everyone else kept talking about how I spoke so little, which I thought was amusing. And then you invited me to speak more. I was like, that seems odd, but sure. I really, that really resonated with me, with what Joe said, that this was like a spring in a otherwise winter for so many of us. I was introduced to you with the Peterson meetups is where I jumped in here, and it was Joe's fault. You can blame Joe for all of us thinking that we were at a Thinking Society brainstorming session on Saturday, and people kept getting confused and thinking we were at the 52 Living Ideas, and I was like, there's a sign that there's too many of us infiltrating Shrikant's group. But the idea, what I have found has been so great, and what I see here is this ability to, my mind is stretched by interacting with the group of you in such that it's more automatic now to seek connections from things that seemingly have no connection. It's not that I didn't do it before, but I think prior to interacting with a whole group of people who not only do the same, but encourage others to do so, before that, I almost was apologetic for going off on a tangent and doing that. But now I own it. Now I'm like, I know a whole bunch of people who do the same. It's more easy to see the value. It's I feel like this group for us kind of is, we are that poem that is building itself collaboratively in the grand scheme. So just wanted to say that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. I want to say that it's been amazing to have this interaction with the Greater Philadelphia Thinking Society. Because if you look at it, it's like you, Joe, CJ, Allison, Ebony, Jyoti, it just goes on. And what it is that you guys have been doing it for a long time, largely thanks to CJ. He's kind of the instigator and kind of pushes people, and it's good organization. And he's like, he's almost like childlike in some ways, and very systematic at the same time.
Very systematic.
Yes. So it's like combination. But what has happened is, as a result of that, I can see like the core that you guys have built over 10 years. It's a really solid core. And the thing is that it, like what we are doing at 52 Living Ideas and what you're doing at like Greater Philadelphia Society, it kind of meshes really, really well, amazingly well. So it's really wonderful to have that. So it's like meeting not just of individual people, but of two different cultures, and seeing the affinity between that. Because if you look at all your meetups, they are similar in that way. Your individual people are exploring different things. And so I think it's just wonderful to have that. So I'm really thankful to Joe for introducing me to CJ and getting this started, because I think it has kind of blossomed in so many different ways. You know, Evaniki is now doing the series on divine feminine, which is going along with Brian. And we have so many different series going on. The literature series, I think, has, you know, is doing really well. So it just goes on and on of how much we are able to do together. Thank you. Mike.
Yeah, I just pulled my 52 Living Ideas notebook out, and May 17th was my first visit. I listened to Franklin Lavoie, and he was talking about the Tao, and I started to keep a list of quotes in here, and I would put a big Q in a circle, and he compared his relationship to the Tao like a tree that roots him. Those are his words. I'm not paraphrasing. And I have a whole lot of them in here, including Maritz's, "I will beat you over the head with intentionality and you'll like it," and a whole bunch of others. So it was just amazing how, looking at all of you in these boxes, which is really all it is, right? It's imagery, yet I just felt this connection. I remember talking to Joe the first time. Joe, was it 2 hours and 45 minutes? Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah, our first phone call.
We just got on the call. And one thing that all of you have really, really helped me with is, one, how to have a conversation, and learning how important it is to listen, which is not easy to do. You know, we're all busy, and unless you kind of learn how to do that, you tend to have your point or your point of view in reserve, cocked and ready to go. And as soon as the other person's done talking, out come the words that you want to say. But I find that I don't really do that here anymore. I've gone through a couple of meetups where I've purposely not said anything. I almost feel selfish, but I've actually had the ability now to go through them sometimes and just listen. And it's really, really hard to do. And Shrikant, lastly, when you did the Art of Learning meetup and you allowed me to actually co-present with you, I was kind of shocked that you did that. And I'll never forget what you said. You said that I had brought up the imposter syndrome and saying sometimes it's uncomfortable to talk about things with people that you don't know, especially in some intellectual frontier where I felt maybe I'm not armed as much as some other people, or I'm not as educated in certain areas. And you just stopped me in my tracks and you said, "You got it backwards, man." You go, those were your words. You said, "You have it backwards, man." You said, "I like to be the one in the situation that knows the least." And that led me, and I'll conclude with, I don't think Peterson is the only one to say this, but he goes, you have to make a decision to fall in love with what you know or fall in love with what you don't know. And I'm definitely leaning toward the latter. So I thank every one of you here. It has been, you know, May 17th, I'm going to put up a banner in my apartment building, my 1-year anniversary.
Wonderful. So on that, I want to build on that. Like, whenever people came to my meetups, in-person meetups, and they would, you know, firstly, they would be astonished because it would be like 60 to 80 people sitting together, okay, in person in New York, in this public space. So they would just come in and say, what is going on here? And what is this, right? What is this? They would ask. And so my short answer to that is that, you know, we're basically exploring kind of the world and ourselves. You know, we each of us is independently doing that. And we've found that, oh, other people are doing that. And it's kind of combination of the fact that you don't think that you know everything. You want to know. You desperately want to know both about the outside world and the inside. And you realize that you don't know many things. You're trying to know. And that sometimes you have all kinds of confirmation bias. So you have all of that going on, right? And you see that the other person is also doing the same thing, that they are intently wanting to know. They have their own kind of strengths and weaknesses. They have their own range of things that they know. They have their own misconceptions. And it's by talking together that we can progress dramatically faster. I mean, to give you an example of that, I'm not religious. Okay, I'm not religious. And we are taking on this, we have taken on, Tao Te Ching, Gospel of John, and Bhagavad Gita. And each time it has blown me away. It was first we started with Tao Te Ching, then we started with Gospel of John. And at each point I was concerned. I said, okay, you know what? I don't know this, and there are all these people. And what happens is that, like, for example, now I can formulate the 52 living ideas. And this is what I'm going to do on Thursday in a very different way. I would never have imagined this. It's like, it's kind of saying that we are all children of God. Okay, the children of God actually captures a lot of things. So God is basically the Tao. It's the Brahma. It is everything and the principle behind everything. So we are not that, but we are children of that. So it's like we can operate. Our knowledge is limited. Our context is limited. Many times we can't speak too well. Okay, we can't understand things too well, but we are children. And this connects with Jacob Bronowski's idea of long childhood as being the heart of what a human being is. This continuous curiosity, combination of ambitiousness and humility at the same time, wanting to know and being very honest about what you don't know. That view of a child, okay, child of that kind, a child that is responsible, that wants to do things, will put a lot of effort into doing things, but knows that it has limits. And then it's basically these children playing together is what 52 Living Ideas is. That we say, oh, you like that, you like this, oh, you know this, oh, that's a nice toy, I've never seen that before. Oh, wait a minute, let's see if we can work together to make something even more interesting. So that's what, it's like. So I think that captures it in a more metaphorical way, which is very powerful. And I think it's a fairly accurate metaphor. I think it captures so many things about what we're doing. Allison.
Yeah, when I first started, I was so intimidated. I really was. I felt like, oh my God, these people are all so smart, and they're from then I'm looking to see where they're. I'm like, this one's in this part of the country, this part of the, somebody's in England, somebody's here, and they're like the smartest people from the planet, and they're all on my Zoom. But then I had to calm myself down, and then I'd say, okay, wait a second. Now, maybe they all know about these things about philosophy and science and math that I don't know. But I have my own comfort zones. Like, I know a lot about literature, and I know a lot about history, and then I kind of just had to just go with it, and then just what I found was that the more I came, then the more I learned. And then also, I really liked it because I'd heard you say that a few times about that you like it when you don't know much about it. And then I was like, oh, so it's okay that I don't know what on earth they're talking about right now. And I kind of got to where I felt comfortable that there are some meetups where I talk a lot because I feel like I have things to say. And then there's some where I feel like I am so overwhelmed that I don't really even know where to begin. And so I just don't really say anything or sometimes I just want to listen. And I was okay with, and I kind of just had to accept that about myself. And, but I have found that throughout all of this, I've watched I have a couple friends that I think of as COVID crazy. They're just kind of gone off the deep end because of the stress of all this. And I felt like I got so absorbed with all these books that, and ideas that I kind of forgot about that. And I still do what I need to do and deal with my life, but it just became this really great thing to look forward to. And also I think there's just something so comforting in these words written by these people from hundreds of years ago, because you think they had their own challenges and they got through it, and their ideas are still relevant today. So there's something very comfort. It's like being like talking to your elders, through books. And there's just something comforting about that. And you feel like, all right, we're going to get through this period in time. And so I don't know, thank you so much for it. Really, it's wonderful.
Thank you, Allison. I mean, see, what I find is that each person has its own strengths. And like, for example, like what you bring from, in terms of your artistic sensibility, it's quite amazing, actually. And you could make just a like offhand comment, which is probably nothing for you. It's like you're saying, oh, this is obviously this way. Okay. But for many people who are kind of more logical oriented, kind of down to earth, for them, it's like a revelation. They say, what? Oh, I never thought of that. Oh yeah, it's true. And vice versa. So there is somebody else who will say something and say, oh, I did not know, because so the fact that, it's a real community, fact that people feel comfortable, okay, of saying that basically there is this level of profound respect that we have for each other. Regardless of anything else, there is this profound respect. And that is the foundation. Because it's like the namaste principle. You're saying the God in me greets the God in you. We are all children of God. So I'm playing with another person who is a child of God, who has the same kind of capability. And because we are all children, there is all kinds of things that we are good at and bad at and all of that. But moment you recognize that and you have that basic respect, I think possibilities open up. And again, the point that you made about sometimes you listen, sometimes you speak, and sometimes you go between them. And there is no pushing this or that. I think people feel comfortable to speak more when they think that they want to say more. And many times people are quiet and they listen. But I know and the thing is that I've noticed that many people, many times they will not say something, but then after attending 5 meetups on something, they will say something, and then you can very quickly tell they've been listening very carefully, taking in all that stuff, making new connections. So it's just wonderful. Thank you, Allison. Rupali.
I think, for us, we used to crave to come down to New York from Massachusetts for the in-person meetups, and we would leave with so much more. And having these meetups on Zoom are so helpful because we can attend so many. And there are the recordings, because as I've mentioned to Shrikant, I could be driving and then Shrikant in the YouTube video says, and let me show you something. And then Shrikant either calls or texts me with very similar thought. For example, I was listening to Bhagavad Gita's chapter 10, and Shrikant in the video says, and let me show you the diagram. And at that very moment, Shrikant texted me the diagram. And I said, wait a minute, this is such a coincidence.
I have a special deal with YouTube. when people are at that point, I know, so I can text them.
So that's been good. As Joe mentioned, I think I've made more friends during COVID than in the non-COVID times. And I've learned to take time out to spend time reading, listening. I think I've read more during COVID thanks to 52 Living Ideas. I've been thinking more during this time. So I just feel that this 52 Living Ideas has been a very, very enriching experience during COVID. So thank you, Shrikant, for doing this. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak in some of the meetups.
Yeah, thank you, Rupali. And you still need to come to New York, New York?
I know. We're going to do that. Of course, we can't miss New York.
But yeah, no, absolutely. No, it's and for me personally, it has been a tremendous learning experience. You know, like I grew up fairly introverted, so I didn't speak much. So this is actually very unusual for me. And for years I studied, you know, that's one thing that is constant. I've always been learning, trying to learn, but I used to learn on my own mostly and talk a little bit to people, just a little bit. This is like, I just discovered that like you learn so much faster when you speak to people, because it is conversational. That's the idea of Bhagavad Gita itself, that you can really learn things only by going through these cycles. You know, it's not a question of trying to get things right in the first time. If you do that, you actually are paralyzed. You don't get anything. You are, and you're full of fear. You're saying, oh, I don't want to make a mistake. Whereas here, it's like you speak out and then you listen. And many times what happens is that in speaking itself, you hear yourself speak, see the reactions and say, oh, this is not right. This is not quite right. Or after speaking it out, somebody will make some points. And the beautiful thing is that I really like the feedback that people give. You know, they give very detailed feedback and they disagree with you so nicely. Okay, it's just wonderful. And that you can take that in, and sometimes, and you know, I'm not very good at this, so it's like I will listen to something and then like later on I will realize, oh, they were saying that. Oh, and that's true. It kind of slowly, it's like a tube light going off later on. But all of it is real, you know, this is real feedback. And I think the quantity makes a difference, because anything that you kind of make a part of your life, like the frequency makes a difference. Anything that you do on a daily basis, anything that you do on a weekly basis has a way of actually transforming you. And so for me, you know, I'm so grateful for everybody who comes here, because they have helped me so much. Next up is Joe, followed by Maritza. Joe.
Yeah, so I mean, one of the things that, well, actually it's interesting about, you were talking about people opening up, and one of the things that actually I appreciate that is Evanique always goes first. Kind of, this is, and especially when I'm hosting, that to me, it was like, it really, it is an icebreaker. That's hard to do. It's hard to do.
And you have always done that for
I that's what she took it over. That's why I was actually appreciative of it. That's because I realized how difficult that was.
Yeah.
Is to go first is really to put yourself out there. And it's not an easy thing to do. But I also want to just, you know, circle back and just see like the quality level of individuals. And I don't mean to discriminate, you know, that, but Harold Nelson, the authors, you had the OODA loop, you had generals.
Yes.
I mean, you have had, you know, Mark Stallman and Yasuhiko. I mean, that the level of individuals that we've had here, that's really remarkable. That is something that is special and unique to 52 Living Ideas. You don't get that anywhere else. And the problem is, in the series that I'm actually just thinking about, I'm missing people. Like I know that there was someone else that in addition to the general that you had around that time frame, that was also very, very high level. And it really has been fabulous. I mean, it's been nothing more than a privilege to attend those meetups, to really think through things. And yeah, I mean, sometimes, like, you know, when it all clicks, it really does feels good.
Yeah, and I'm particularly grateful to people like Yasuhiko and Mark Stallman,
Right.
because they actually love what we do. Okay, they really have a lot of respect for what we do. They just simply love it. You know, Yasuhiko told me that the presentation that I did here in poetry last week was his favorite presentation on Gita. Now, he's actually spent 3 years in India studying all Indian philosophy. He has friends who have been studying it for a long time. So coming, kind of getting feedback from him like that is amazing. It's amazing. And he's very excited about this, the Bible thing I'm doing. And so I'll be sending him that, and let's see what he says about that. But that's like very deep engagement of really great people. And Mark Stallman is also like that. It's very deep engagement that is there. He's going back and forth, and you can see how much of Mark Stallman's ideas are kind of core part of what we're doing, like the scribal, for example. I mean,
Right.
the biggest lesson that I've learned in the last year is the scribal. The power of the scribal, this integrated way of thinking with that diagram that, kind of where your mind is fully engaged, your heart is fully engaged, and your actions are fully engaged. So that, the stuff that produces that, and that is the default for
Right.
scribal. So you can see it in Aquinas, you can see it in Aristotle, you can see it in, the Gospel of John, especially Gospel of John.
Right.
Then Bhagavad Gita. I'm really in awe of Bhagavad Gita at this point. And I'm just gonna go ahead.
No, I mentioned this many times that it is, kind of renewed my faith in a different kind of way. It's resurrected it.
Yes, and one thing I want to say, sorry to interrupt, Joe, but one thing I want to say is that, see, this is again a very big point. Like when you look at Bhagavad Gita on its own terms, or Gospel of John, you try to commune with it in its own terms, it's actually very different. Or now it's very different than how religion is being practiced in India today, or religion is being practiced in America today. It's very different. And it is actually far more integratable with, for example, this Longest Childhood of Jacob Bronowski. Now that's a completely secular point. It's an integration. It is his largest integration about what human beings are. And that is based on complete science and industry axes. And it is arriving at exactly the same point. And that kind of work, it's profoundly transformative. You know that, like Jacob Bronowski is like the height of what the Enlightenment can do, of just kind of being able to understand all these thinkers, being able to pull together all of that, and being able to state what is going on at a very deep philosophical, epistemological level, and in the clearest possible way. And you can see the correspondence between that and what we are doing on Tao Te Ching, or them. You can see that it's the same kind of thing that is being said, but this integrated function. And what happens is that, like, modern world is very much fragmented and ritualistic. It is like saying, in using Louis Sullivan's terms, it's too much form, too little function. People holding on to too many forms without the function, grasping the function. So wonderful. Thank you. Next up is Laura, followed by Maritza. Laura. Laura, you need to unmute. Nope. Okay, Maritza.
Okay,
So,
I got it.
Okay, go ahead, Laura.
I just want to say, when I'm painting now, I'm always saying form over function as I paint, and I'm constantly it's become part of my painting vocabulary now when I actually put my brush to the canvas. So I've integrated these worlds completely now.
Thank you, Laura.
How do you like that?
Thank you. Go ahead, Maritza.
I was going to make a comment on something you just said, and my brain is, so Joe was saying he found his faith is renewed in some going through some of the stuff with the group here. And for me, I find it to be a challenge that's so exciting in proving or not proving, but seeing a constant and a lack of finding a false statement yet. So in all the various topics that we have tackled, I have not yet found an error message of false statement in my desire to replace the word God with philosophy. This is a notion I had said, and so many, the biggest thing, and I've said this before and I'll say it again here, the biggest thing for me about 52 Living Ideas is that it has given me a conviction of my ideas that I didn't have. Like I had these ideas I've been saying all my life, but I kind of whispered them apologetically and wincingly, hoping that, you know, I didn't scare too many people or uncertain of how, you know, crazy they might sound, as it were. And so here with this group, I found more conviction in saying it and owning it. But it's the most exciting thing is that across all the various topics and tomes that we're studying and reading and looking at, I'm really excited to see that there's no false statement. I can replace the word God in every situation with the word philosophy, and it holds through thus far. Now, obviously, there's so much more to learn yet, so we'll see. But so far, it's exciting. That was just one thing I want to say. And also, Shrikant, I have a small little poem by, you know, some guy you may have heard of, Walt Whitman. Small little poem from his book Leaves of Grass that I think is the perfect poem to close us down today. But there's two other people with their hand up. So if I may, the name of the poem is Towards
the closing poem. Let people speak.
Exactly,
yeah.
Right. So
Do a closing
yes.
poem. So closing poem, I'll come to you. If I forget, please remind me.
Thank you. Yes.
Thank you. Rupali followed by Mike. Rupali. Oh, just a second. Mike, Rupali wants Mike to go first. Mike followed by Rupali.
Yeah, I think we should come up with a word here to describe what just happened to me. So when Maritza was talking about God and philosophy, it kind of reminded me of a way that I've been pushed in my life recently because of 52 Living Ideas, specifically when Mark Stallman was asked for advice at the end of his first digital meetups. One of the things that he said was, maybe you should go back to church. And I am not a religious person, but I went back to church about 5 weeks ago, and I've been going quite regularly, 3 or 4 times a week. And if you listen to CJ's presentations, the word inquiry comes up quite a bit. So this little kind of stepping stone from hearing Mark Stallman, who I didn't know, right? I didn't know him prior to the meetups, talking about how the digital age and how things, we don't no longer live in the modern age, right? We're in this digital age. Yet one of the first bits of advice out of his mouth was maybe to go revisit a house of worship or go to church. And then, you know, I'm listening to CJ talk about really what inquiry is, like really getting inside something and searching for something. It's just amazing how listening to those conversations led me, as someone who hadn't been to church in many, many, many years, to go back to church. And I still can't really formulate in words why I'm there, but it's this journey of inquiry that came from somebody's advice, and just hearing CJ use the word, put them together, and it's life-changing, you know? So that's another byproduct of attending these meetups.
Wow. I want to say 2 things. One is this integration between the secular and the scribal. Secular is much later, scribal is earlier. I won't say religious, because religion is mostly, people think about the religion today. I'm talking about the scribal. So there is, like, for example, the diagram that I have for Gita, you know, first where I drew it to describe the theme of Fountainhead. Okay, it's the same diagram that morphed into that. So now Ayn Rand is not a religious person, but she is spiritual, and she's that spirit, the idea that there is something inside of us that seeks truth. I think the best word for God in secular terms that I found is either truth or, as Rupali is saying, universal principle. Because philosophy is like a body of knowledge, whereas what you're really seeking is what is true, what is it, what is it, what is it? That's what science does, right? It's asking this question when it is doing inquiry. What is the question on the mind? What is it? What is it? And what is it includes you too. So who am I? What is the world? Who am I? What is the world? And what should I do? Those are the questions. You know, who am I? What is the world? What should I do? So those are really kind of the heart of philosophy. This is like epistemology, metaphysics, ethics. And it just maps very beautifully together. And I'm finding that, you know, because for me, I can just, all those diagrams, to me, it's very secular. You can look at it, just what are you doing with your mind? What are you doing with your emotions, your heart? And what are you doing with your actions? Those are the things. That's it, that you're worried about. And the greatness of the scribal, and also of great art, by the way. So when you see Victor Hugo, when you see Beethoven, when you see Leonardo da Vinci, you see this integration between the mind, the heart, and actions all going together. And that's how it is meant to be. So in some ways, all these ideas of philosophy, saying, you know, term philosophy, term religion, it is all have lost their original meaning. So philosophy for people like Aristotle is very different, or Aquinas is very different in the scribal age. And religion or natural philosophy, it is also different. And that meaning, those are very close to each other because you're trying to answer the same questions. Thank you. Thank you, Mike. Next up is Rupali.
Thank you, Shrikant. I just want to say that some of our students have been on 52 Living Ideas, and everybody in our school knows Louis Sullivan now. Like when I say form follows function, and then the children will go, I know that guy, that's Louis Sullivan. So that's one thing. And then they also now know center and periphery, because every time, you know, a student comes to my office because they're misbehaving or anything, and the teacher sends them to my office, we have a conversation and I draw the center and periphery for them. And I say, how far are you from your center? And what do you need to get back to the center? And it just has become such a wonderful tool to get the students back aligned, as opposed to disciplining them in any other way. It's a very positive way, and children get it. The other thing is that children are very close to the center as compared to the adults. And so they're able to get back on track so quickly. So I just wanted to share that. Thank you.
Oh, that's wonderful, Rupali. So I'll make two points. One is the idea of living ideas, right? This is what living idea is. You know, you have those diagrams, you have your words, and you're trying to apply them relentlessly to everything that you're doing. And in the process, so it's living idea in two sense, is that it's ideas for living that are, it is your conception of what is going on. So that diagram is my conception of what is going on in me. So it is capturing of life, and it is living in the sense that I'm using it to live. And in the process, it is that action is transforming that diagram. So there is this two-way connection. And the point that Rupali is making is so beautiful, because this is applicable across social, you know, across people too. So different people kind of take the idea and say, okay, I'm going to apply this idea. And in the process of doing that, they will bring observations which you have not thought of. So as other people start engaging with those ideas, they live even more, not only kind of because they're living in other people, but the net life in the idea goes up and you are benefiting from all of that. So for example, the idea of children and closeness to center, because what happens is that I think for most people, they build too much into their periphery and they get attached too much to the periphery. So it's like their center of gravity moves from being close to their center to outside. And most of their attention is focused on the periphery because they have a lot of junk there, a lot of stuff lying around there, your habits, your emotions, your thoughts. So along all three axes, there is stuff on the periphery. You're attached to your emotions. You know, you may hate somebody or you may fear something, and that is just taking your mental cycles, taking you away from the center. You can have, you know, we did the meetup last time, the collaborative poetry, and don't get attached to your thoughts. So you can have some thoughts there that are keeping you away from the center through confirmation bias. You can have your habits in actions that are keeping you away. Now the children, they have not had that much time to build up all of that stuff. So they are more responsive. And in that sense, you know, I have a lot of, you know, I have tremendous respect for Rupali and people who are deeply engaged in teaching children, because it requires a lot of patience and a lot of love to make it happen. And but the results are spectacular. You know, they are spectacular, and it's really, you know, great to kind of see somebody like, say, maybe 10 years later or something like that, saying, oh, this is what this person became as a result of all this hard work done day by day, day by day. It just, you know, it builds that kind of a person. And I can see that in, Rupali's son, Agastya, who was here talking about his research, or my niece, because they're just amazing, amazing people. And so as what is it? There is a song by Louis Armstrong where it says, I don't know the words, they're not coming to me.
What a beautiful world.
Yeah, what a beautiful world. And there is a very beautiful phrase that there are these children who will know much more than I ever knew. And that's exactly what the goal is, that you try to do your best, and people learn, and they will do more things. And so absolutely. So all right, folks, so this was so amazing. This was so amazing. All right, Maritza, Rupali, did you want to read a poem before Maritza reads her final poem?
No, I think Maritza can go ahead. I'll
Okay.
save mine for another.
Okay, go ahead, Maritza.
All right, so this poem makes me think of this group. Toward the Unknown Region by Walt Whitman. Dearest thou now, O soul, walk out with me towards the unknown region, where neither ground is for the feet nor any path to follow. No map there, nor guide, nor voice sounding, nor touch of human hand, nor face with blooming flesh, nor lips, nor eyes are in that land. I know it not, O soul, nor dost thou. All is a blank before us. All waits undreamed of in that region, that inaccessible land, till when the ties loosen, all but the ties eternal, time and space, nor darkness, gravitation, sense, nor any bounds bounding us. Then we burst forth, we float, in time and space, also prepared for them, equal, equipped at last. O joy, O fruits of all, them to fulfill. Also,
Wow. All right, folks, on that note, we'll see you next time. Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Thanks for coming.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Sure.